afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Cavletics, an inside look into the athletics department and the goings-on here at Bossier Parish Community College. I'm your host, Charlie Cavell, and today we've got a special show for you. Since we're in the middle of football season, and like I mentioned on our last show, maybe one day we'll be discussing and talking about BPCC Cavalier football. However, we're going to talk faith, life, law enforcement, and of course football, plus a whole lot more with our special guest, Bossier City Police Officer Chad Johnson. Chad, welcome to the show.
Thank you, sir.
Good to see you.
Thank you, sir.
And thanks for being here. Well, let's start off. Let's go back to where it all started. Tell us where you grew up and how'd you get into athletics?
Well, I'm a Bossier City native. My family's from Benton. And growing up, my mom was a great athlete, basketball player, and my dad was a pretty strong guy. And so between that combination, fell into sports, come from a family line of sports, and was pretty blessed with it.
Well, as you got older, did you play multiple sports or did you just focus only on football?
I did. I played every sport. It kept me out of trouble, kept me busy, what my mom used to say. Started off playing football, basketball, went into track, went into baseball.
Did that, as you said, it kind of kept you off the street and kept you out of trouble? And that was the main focus, I'm sure.
It was the focus. I had a lot of energy growing up, and so I had to find somewhere to put it. And once I fell in love with sports, playing football, watching football, it became a passion, and on to basketball and so forth.
You went to Evangel Christian Academy, yes, where you were a standout defensive back for the Eagles. How and why did you choose Evangel, or did you come to choose Evangel?
Growing up, I went to Benton. High School. Right about my sophomore year, my mom decided we needed a change, just personally. And so the opportunity to go to Evangel kind of fell right there in my lap. And when it did, we took advantage of it. And at the time, we all know Evangel was a powerhouse. And I had in my heart to be great. And when I went and met Coach Dunn and got a chance to tour the facilities there, I knew I had a great opportunity to achieve some of my goals there.
Was it maybe through the North Point Community Church? I'm not. I know Pastor Deanza and Denny and Deanza Duron. I had the North Point Community Church out in the north section of Bossier City. Did that have any influence on maybe helping you just pinpoint a place to go? Like
it didn't. I'll be honest with you. Playing ball, Evangel was a powerhouse, and everybody knew who Evangel was. And they were putting kids in college, Division I, back-to-back. And so I wanted an opportunity to win a state championship, and I wanted an opportunity to go play Division I football. And at the time, that was the school to go to. And so once I went over there and got a chance to meet with the coaches, and they welcomed me there, the rest became history.
Well, in addition to a lot of wins, a lot of championships, as well as a path to play football in college and into the pros, what else did Evangel provide for Chad Johnson?
The atmosphere. The atmosphere, having a Christian background at that school. One of the biggest things stuck out to me was when I got there how much love it was. And kind of growing up in the areas and neighborhoods I grew up in, it wasn't common for a man to tell another man, hey, I love you. And when I got there, that was one of the first things I noticed, the love that was there between the players and the coaches and the parents and the whole atmosphere. And if I could take anything from that place, it was the love and the passion that they had for God.
There's been a list of great coaches at Evangel. Dennis Dunn, you mentioned, sir. Johnny Booty, John Bachman, and of course, Denny Duron. Which of these men had the greatest impact on your life and why?
All of them, because all of them brought something different to the table. And all of them was father figures. Coach Bachman to this day, and also Coach Alexander, who was my defensive coach.
Ronnie Alexander.
Yes, sir. I think with Coach Alexander, he brought a presence to the defensive side. And when he walked in the room, we knew it was business time. And I think for him, me building a relationship with him, earning his trust, to this day, I can still go to those guys' house and walk right into the house because they're still family and they're still father figures to me.
Prior to high school and the enormity of Evangel football, as you said, a powerhouse and a juggernaut, because in those days they were, nationally ranked football program. How big a role did your faith and your belief in God and play in your life and in your life as a football player at Evangel?
It was huge. Growing up, I grew up in the church with my family, with my mom and my grandparents, and we went to church weekly. And so the opportunity to instill that into school, into football, because sometimes you can have church and then you can have school. You can have church and you can have work. And when you can bring all that together, the way I was able to do it at Evangel and be a leader and go out and pray with guys and be able to not only play the game of football, but help change lives as young men and spiritually, it was great.
Did it permeate the whole program?
Yes.
Every aspect of the program?
Yes, it did. We had Bible class during school. We prayed before and after games. We even prayed with our opponents. And that was something unique back then. And so to this day, I still have a relationship with guys spiritually that I not only played with on the team, but also played against.
That's interesting. Well, that's really amazing. Where, when, and how was your relationship with God cultivated in your life? You mentioned you grew up in the church, but a lot of times as a young person, a child, a young kid, you go because your parents go, and that's what they do. That's what you do. Where did you first realize that God was playing such an important role in your life?
I was baptized at the age of 6. And like I say, we was consistent in church. One of my greatest accomplishments was when I was 16. I accepted my calling into ministry. And so at 16 years old, I started preaching. And it was amazing. My school at Evangel accepted me. I was a team captain in football. So I got a chance to not only speak to the team and pray with the team, but Evangel offered me an opportunity to go to the elementary school and actually teach a Bible class.
Wow.
As a junior and as a senior. And so I probably ministered to about 60 kids at the elementary school. And it just helped strengthen my relationship with God. It allowed me to study more. And so from the age of 16 to even currently now, I'm still in the ministry.
Well, really empowering for a young man, 16 years old?
Yes, sir.
To be able to go and do that for younger children.
It was amazing. It was amazing to be able to, lead my third or fourth block class and commute to the elementary, which was at the church at the time, and go in there and teach a Bible class to the youth. It was tremendous for me. It helped not only build leadership for me, but it also kept me mentally and spiritually on the right path.
That's amazing. From Evangel, you went to the Texas Panhandle and the Dust Bowl that is Lubbock, Texas, to play collegiately for the Texas Tech Red Raiders.
Yes, sir.
Why Texas Tech?
Texas Tech was one of the first schools that started recruiting me. And their coaching staff reminded me so much of Evangel coaching staff. Those men were more than just coaches. They were like father figures. And so I had family there. And when I went there, the first time I visited, I fell in love there. And I knew I had an opportunity to go and play right away as a true freshman. And so that's what led me to Texas Tech.
As a college kid, as an athlete, and especially as a standout football player, how were you able to stay on the right path, particularly with the temptations that exist at every corner in collegiate life?
Right. I truly believe, and the Bible says, if you train a child in a certain manner and in a certain way, then when life hits them, they'll fall back on it. And so for me, having a spiritual background, it allowed me, even once I got out into the real world, it allowed me to fall back on the morals that was instilled in me by my parents and my grandparents. And so at times it wasn't easy because you had to be different. And I made a vow to be different. And so it was a lot of challenges, it was a lot of temptations. But for the main part, I was able to stay focused because of the things that were instilled in me.
Well, and I'm going to throw a little curveball out to you. You talk about that Bible passage in the training, having been in the military and you in law enforcement. Boy, that's something you can really truly fall back on, because you talk to any soldier, any police officer, fireman, first responder about, being involved in some type of life-altering, life-threatening event or a catastrophic event, and they say, well, the training kicks in.
Exactly. And that's a perfect example of what it is. When you're trained a certain way, we call it muscle memory. When you do something repeatedly and over and over and over, then when an obstacle comes or a tragedy hits, you fall back on what you know. And so that's why it's so important. I tell young people to be able to read your word and get into the word, build a relationship with God, because it's going to come at some point. Adversity is going to fall.
Give us some of your most memorable moments as a Texas Tech Raider, some of those pistols up and firing moments as a Red Raider.
Man, I remember the very first game I went to as a recruiting trip, and I just remember the sensation I got from 60,000 fans yelling and screaming. And the very first time walking out of that tunnel and seeing that horse come across that field and the guns go up. And my very first game, I got an interception. And just knowing the feeling of being able to play at that level in the Big 12 and be able to go out there for my fans and hear from back home and represent Bossier in a positive manner, it was amazing.
You have those amazing feelings. You were a standout defensive back in a conference known for throwing the football.
Yeah.
Not known as much for defense,
Yeah.
but known for slinging it all over the field.
Yes, sir.
And why then the decision to leave Tech and go to Northwestern State?
Well,
What brought that about?
my mom got diagnosed with breast cancer.
Okay.
And she got real sick. And I'm the only child by my mom, and so she was in a position to where she needed me to be closer to home. And so to me it was a no-brainer, and I had to sacrifice, and I got with Coach Stoker at the time there at Northwestern and kind of gave him my situation with my mom, and Northwestern and Natchitoches welcomed me with open arms.
That had to be a difficult decision because, and one for a young person, that's extremely difficult. Of course, you're obligated to your mom, and
Right.
I get that part. But you're having a good career, potentially leading to the National Football League, and you're having at a place you love, and you have to give that up.
Right.
And as you mentioned, the word sacrifice, and that's not something you hear a lot of time from young people.
Right. You're exactly right, and it was a sacrifice. And I knew that doing this, I had to focus that much harder because I knew I was going to a smaller school, so to say. And so I really had to stay focused. And for me, I just fell back on what I knew. And that was the Word of God. And whenever adversity hit, I was able to fall back on it and, continue to stay on that path that I was traveling.
Unfortunately, you didn't get an opportunity to showcase your talents for the Demons. Why is that? I spoke to their sports information director, Doug Ireland, who's kind of been the dean now of
Right.
SIDs in the state. And Doug, who usually has a pretty good memory, said, I don't remember exactly what the circumstances were.
Right. Well, when I transferred, I lost some credits, lost some hours. And we had a problem on trying to get me eligible. And it happened right there during the season. And so with it being my junior year and me being eligible to go into the NFL draft, I could have stayed and came back another year, but just due to the situation I was dealing with my family, I decided to go ahead and give it a shot in the NFL.
Well, and what a testament for you because, you eventually did make it to the NFL without even playing it down your junior year. That's incredible. We're going to take a break now, folks, and when we come back, we're going to have some more with Officer Chad Johnson following the break.
Bossier Parish Community College, the fastest growing community college in the nation. Wonder why?
The arts are crucial to Bossier Parish Community College. We provide opportunities to our students in film, in television, in acting, in music. They get that training here at BPCC with direct, hands-on approach. They can then take that training back out into the community and get a job.
Here at Bossier Parish Community College, there are so many opportunities and classes that are offered to you. It's like the whole world of theater is right here at BPCC.
Check us out. You'll understand why.
Coast Guard Foundation gave me funds to attend school. During that same time, my wife was pregnant. The foundation's grant allowed us to buy food, diapers, clothing.
Coast Guard Foundation really helps us to keep in touch with our families. They make an impact, and it leaves an impression that you don't forget.
I would like to thank the Coast Guard Foundation for helping out when times were tough.
Because sometimes, even the rescuers need to be rescued. The Coast Guard Foundation, proudly supporting the men and women of the United States Coast Guard and their families. Find out how you can help at rescuetherescuers.org.
You've seen how recent hurricanes have devastated whole communities, flooding and destroying homes. Join Habitat for Humanity as we work with families to repair and rebuild. You can help someone desperately in need of a place to call home. We will rebuild, but only with your help. Visit Habitat.org to support Habitat's work.
Welcome back to Cavletics. I'm Charlie Cavell, visiting with Bossier City Police Officer Chad Johnson, who was a defensive back in the National Football League. And when we left off, I notice I said specifically defensive back because there was another Chad Johnson in the National Football League at the same time that you were, Cincinnati Bengals wide receiver Chad Ochocinco Johnson. And if you've ever tried Googling or searching for yourself, make sure you're specific to Chad Johnson from Benton, Louisiana, okay? Because
yes, sir.
I tell you what,
Yes, sir.
it was difficult.
You know, I get that a lot. When people say Chad Johnson, a football player, people automatically think of Ocho. And for me, at the time, that was fine because I like to kind of fly under the radar away from the field. And so he got a lot of attention. And I got a chance to meet the guy, great guy. And so whenever you say that name, Chad Johnson, even still today, that's who most people think of.
Well, Chad, when did you realize that you had the talent, skill, and ability to play in the National Football League? And I ask that because, like we said before the break, you didn't play a down your junior year.
Right.
But still managed to get drafted into the NFL.
Well, it may sound crazy, but as a child competing, I knew that I could rise to whatever level of competition that I was playing against. One was due to my God-given ability, and second was for my hard work and my ethic. And I was going to put forth whatever effort I had to put forth to be the captain or the top player. And if the circumstances fell where I had to play any other role, I was willing to sacrifice for it. And so I tell young people all the time, not only do the team have leaders, but they also have to have followers, and you have to know your role. And so as a child growing up playing ball throughout, middle school, high school, even college, I understood that if I was going to play at the next level, whatever it was, I had to understand my role.
When you get to the NFL and in particular training camp, was ever there a time where doubt started to creep in and you just wanted to give up? I mean, your NFL rosters have 53 men on their roster. There's 32 teams, roughly 1,600 men in the world play at that elite level.
Right.
Was there ever a time, you're such a strong man of faith and of leadership and character, was there ever a time when you're surrounded by all these superior athletes that doubt started to creep in?
Never doubt creeped in at that moment. Where the doubt was probably my junior year when I didn't get an opportunity to play. And I told myself, man, if I don't play my junior year, I may not get a shot at the league. And when the Minnesota Vikings called on draft night and I got that opportunity, once I got there, I knew the level of competition. And I knew for me it was just about staying healthy, staying focused, staying out of trouble, and make sure I surround myself with people who wanted the same goals that I wanted. And for me, that was to find a spiritual connection at that level.
Tell us about, what some of the great moments in your career, maybe the highlight of your career. You played with a few different teams, but particularly with the Vikings. But give us one of your highlight moments.
What level?
In the NFL.
In the NFL, one of my highlight moments was probably my rookie year with the Vikings, playing the Dallas Cowboys and getting the chance to play against T.O. And at the time, he was, of course, in his prime. And I never forget.
Now in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah. I remember walking out, first seeing him, I believe I was starstruck, and I was like, wow, that's T.O. And seeing a man of that stature, 6'3", 6'4", solid the way he was, it was a reality check. And at that moment, I said, wait a minute, I got to get out of here because I got to cover this guy. And I actually got my first NFL interception that game. And so for me, that was probably one of the biggest highlight moments for me as a player.
Tell us, if you will, about some of the players, coaches, or staff that, or even support folks who may have had the biggest impact on you personally during your time in the NFL.
Coach Herm Edwards, when I got to Kansas City, he was very hands-on with me. I remember we had a Hard Knocks when I was in Minnesota playing against the Chiefs. We had the HBO Hard Knocks. And he used to always tell me, man, I like what you're doing, keep doing it, keep doing it. And so for me to get an opportunity to go there and play up under him, and also Coach Leslie Frazier, who was the defensive coordinator for the Minnesota Vikings, great spiritual guy. And him and Herm was kind of cut from the same cloth. And so playing for those two guys was probably very memorable because it reminded me of my coaches, again, at Evangel and at Texas Tech.
Well, we're going to jump ahead a little bit. A while back, you had a calling to law enforcement after your career in the NFL. Tell me about that. How did, we often hear people talk about a calling, whether it's to the ministry or to be a teacher or a coach. Where was the calling for you to be a law enforcement officer?
Well, once again, growing up, I come from a military family. And so the uniform was always close to my heart. And growing up, I used to always watch, I was a country boy, so I used to always watch the Westerns and cop shows with my grandparents. And one of my favorite shows still today was In the Heat of the Night. And I used to love myself some Bubba Skinner. And I used to always say, I'm going to put on a uniform one day. And after going to college, the opportunity presented itself for law enforcement, and I always had a passion for it. And I had a passion for helping those who couldn't help themselves. And so it played a role in me coming back home here in Bossier City and being able to make a difference in my community from a different aspect from sports to being able to do it in law enforcement.
Well, and that leads me to my next question. In addition to being one of Bossier's finest, Chad serves as a mentor to our athletes here at Bossier Parish Community College. Along those same lines of timing, if you will, and calling, how did you get involved with mentoring young people and in particular athletes here at BPCC?
Well, to whom much is given, much is required. And for me to have the opportunity to be able to achieve some of the goals that I did, I feel obligated to be able to give back. And being here at BPCC for me has been tremendous because at one point I was kind of torn between coaching or law enforcement. And both of those jobs are time consuming and it's dedication to it. And so when I chose law enforcement, I really kind of got out of the mix of sports. Right. And so being here at BPCC and the great staff, along with yourself, welcome me here on campus, I get a chance to mentor some of the athletes here and be a part, and it feels great.
You've invested a lot of your personal time as well as your family's time supporting BPCC Athletics.
Yes,
and
sir.
Tell us about your family and why you've all become so invested here at BPCC.
Well, being a Bossier native, I call it my city. I love Bossier with a passion. And to see these young people come in here from all over the world, different places, to be able to come here, not only myself but my family wants them to feel at home. And the biggest thing for an athlete or for anybody is support. And so when you're able to connect with someone that's from the other side of the world or from another state or another city, and they can come here and make this place feel at home, that's a game changer for them. And so I'm just blessed to be in that position to be able to give them that feeling.
Recently, my family dealt with the sudden and tragic death of my wife's 19-year-old niece in an auto accident. These are situations, you talked to me earlier in the week
Yes,
about
sir.
dealing with a shooting here in Bossier City that unfortunately led to the tragic death of an airman at Barksdale Air Force Base. These are situations you often face in your line of work. How do you turn a tragedy like these into something good and a positive message for young people to learn, a teaching moment, if you will?
For one, when tragedies happen like that, you really get to see what love and family and community is all about. And I think here in Bossier City, even with the tragedy that we had, how we pulled together as a city, and for Green Acres as a community, the way they pulled together to not only show respects for the victim, but also to be able to show his family that love is out there and that they're going to do whatever they can to give you comfort in your time of need. And so for young people, you have to prepare for adversity because it will hit at some point. And when it does, you got to have something to fall back on. And for me, it's always been God and my relationship with him.
Well, Chad, I appreciate it. Thank you so much for joining us today. And thank you, ladies and gentlemen, and for joining us for this episode of Cavletics. Join us again next Friday as we bring you the latest on Bossier Parish Community College athletics. I'm Charlie Cavell, bidding you a good sports day.